Hello, y'all. So today I'm going to talk about a real famous book called The Black Skin, White Masks, written by Frantz Fanon. So I'm gonna talk about chapter 1 and chapter 7, which I retrieved from the Norton Anthology. So in chapter 1, Fanon argues that black people exist in two modes. One is the real black authentic community, another is the white counterpart. That means black people mimic what white people do, and they would, in the company of the whites, right? So when a colonizer community enters into the African land, they would first colonize the local people and the local resources. Another is they would invent some system that demonstrate their superiority over the local communities, right? So one example Fanon gives is the Pidgin language. Pidgin language is not like French counterpart, but it does appropriate something from French, but the grammars and the sentence structure are a lot of easier than French. So the local community, in this case, the black community, is using this language and is reminded of their inferiority because when they are using this language, they notice that they do not use the same way as French people do, right? And Fanon gives an example of Antilleans group. So Antillean group, some of the scholars from Antillean group, they would go to French, and when they are in France, they deliberately forgot the ways things work in their homeland and are highly critical of their countrymen and behave in an authoritative manner, right? So Fanon sincerely disagrees with the opinion that for a colonized community, they have to catch up with the colonized intelligence. By intelligence, Fanon means is an artificially defined intelligence, and the colonizers define this intelligence for those colonized people, and the intelligence does not reflect the local context, right? So if a colonized people have to catch up with the colonizer, so he or she has to relearn the whole thing because he's encountering different things, right? So Fanon does not think intelligence, this human defined intelligence is a matter, but he does think we gotta, catch up with the language the colonizers are using. Why? Because, when we do negotiate with those colonizers, we have to learn their pattern of communication, right? But this language barrier is not unique in this colonizer versus colonized pattern, because when for example, a non-French white people goes to France, he or she has also language barrier, in front of him, right? So he has to relearn everything basically. But for those French people, when they are talking with that person, they would expect this person's language and this person's culture behavior would be no similar to them, right? So intelligence is not an issue, but language is indeed an issue. So for black people, they have to abandon this inferior language as Pidgin, which is invented by the colonizer, but they have to learn the real authentic French language, right? And when those black people are using this Pidgin language, they are reminded of their culture inferiority. Let me read two quotes. Yet within the colonial mindset, black people do not have a culture of their own and are understood only in terms of racist stereotypes invented by white people. The effect is that the black people feels his very self disappearing. When white people speak Pidgin, the aim is to remind black people of their position of inferiority, right? So let's go straight to chapter 7. Alright, then for now, in chapter 7 talks about overcompensation. So what does that mean? So that means in a colonized society, the colonized people have to behave extra well to those colonizers because after their cultural domain being eradicated, they have to both adopt a colonizers' civilization pattern and also have to maintain their own cultural ground. And so they have to behave extra well and abide by the rule extra well. And besides, for a colonizer, he or she doesn't have to speak out to represent his cultural heritage, right? His or her cultural heritage, right? So for white people in America, so even he does not have actual ideologies. He does not have anything to bring onto the table. So people would still think he's an embodiment of American, right? So he's still representing what American have done, right? But for a minority group, they have to, abide by the rule and being observed by other peoples, and other people would accept him as a inner member of this society, right? So this is how overcompensation for minority group works, for now at least. So then Fanon talks about the dichotomy between master and slavery. So when a slave is emancipated by his or her master, he's physically free, but he does not have any knowledge base to convey his freedom. That said, he does not inherit any system from his master, but he's a free man. He can do anything, but he's not rational enough to make his or her decision, right? So black people wish that white people would openly acknowledge the racist antagonism they feel so that they could react to it, but white people often do not do so. So white people would say, oh, come on, I already give you freedom, so what do you want? So you can be walking around, you can be doing anything you want, so what do you want? So this reminds me of a real catchy term. I'm not if it's catchy for American, but it's catchy for me. So affirmative action, right? So affirmative action means to give special privilege and attention to the minority group so that they can catch up with the average standard. That means we already apply a stereotypical thinking to him. That means we anticipate his inferiority. I think this kind of relates to Fanon's ideologies. So how do we obtain freedom if not that we are waiting for a emancipation? We would have to fight for it, according to Fanon, because any freedom that is given by somebody else is not a true freedom. Because we do not establish our concept and our practical activities of freedom. So even when we are given freedom, we cannot abide by the definition of freedom. So we have to first construct our definition of freedom, then we practice on it. So we have to fight for it. Basically, this is what Fanon's saying.